Sophie, I want to start today with a moment that almost every English learner has lived through, and I want them to feel it physically as we describe it, because the moment you feel it, the whole episode is going to hit differently.
Okay, walk us in.
You have been working on your English, you have been practicing, and one day, maybe as part of a course, maybe because a friend suggested it, maybe because you saw it recommended on YouTube, you decide to record yourself. Just a short clip. Maybe you read a paragraph out loud. Maybe you answer a question. You press record, you speak, you press stop. And then, with a small sense of hope, you press play to hear yourself, to see how you sound.
Yes.
And in that moment, something inside you dies a little. The voice coming out of the speaker is not the voice you thought you had. The English sounds foreign. The accent is heavier than it feels from the inside. The pronunciation is not what you imagined. The rhythm is off. You sound honestly like a stranger, and a stranger with problems.
And you sit there listening to yourself and you feel a deep, sinking, painful thought. Oh my God, is that what I sound like? Is that what people hear when I speak English?
And you close the recording, delete it, vow never to do it again, and carry that moment inside you for months, sometimes years, as proof that your English is worse than you thought, as evidence that you have been fooling yourself.
And here's what almost no one tells learners. The voice on the recording is not more accurate than the voice you hear in your head. It is not the real you, and the voice in your head is not a lie either. They are two different acoustic experiences of the same voice.
And once you understand the neuroscience of why they sound so different, the horror of hearing yourself begins to lose its power.
And more importantly, once you learn to listen to your recorded voice with a specific mindset called acoustic objectivity, you can turn one of the most painful English experiences into one of the most powerful learning tools you have. Because the recording, once you know how to listen, is genuinely one of the most valuable feedback sources in language learning, if you can survive the initial shock.
In today, we are going to teach you exactly that. We are going to explain the bone conduction science of why your recorded voice sounds so different from your imagined voice. We are going to expose the self-criticism trap that ruins recordings for learners. And we are going to give you the 3-step acoustic objectivity protocol that turns the recording into a friend instead of an enemy.
Welcome to Side by Side English Podcasts. I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie.
Today is for the learner who has recorded themselves and hated what they heard, who has vowed never to record themselves again, who carries the memory of that first horrified playback and lets it define their whole relationship with their own English voice. We are going to change that today.
Stay with us. We have the bone conduction science explained, why your recorded voice sounds so different from your imagined voice, the self-criticism trap that ruins recordings for learners, the acoustic objectivity mindset explained in full, the 3-step protocol for productive listening, a role play showing the self-criticism reaction versus the acoustic objectivity reaction to the same recording, and a word tour with 6 powerful B2 to C1 words.
Quick comment question before we begin. Be honest. Have you ever recorded yourself speaking English and hated the result? Drop a yes or no. We want to see how universal this is.
Okay, let's face the recording. So, Sophie, let's start with the science. Why does your recorded voice sound so different from the voice you hear in your head? Because this is not psychology, this is physics.
Yes, this is genuinely fascinating, and it applies to every human being, not just language learners. Let me explain. When you speak, the sound of your voice reaches your ears in 2 completely different ways at the same time.
2 ways.
2 ways. Way 1 is the normal way. Your voice comes out of your mouth. It travels through the air. It enters your ears from the outside, just like any other sound. This is called air conduction. It is exactly how other people hear you.
And way 2?
Way 2 is invisible, special, and extremely powerful. When you speak, your vocal cords vibrate, and those vibrations travel not just through the air, they also travel through the bones and tissues of your skull directly into your inner ear from the inside. This is called bone conduction.
bone conduction.
And bone conduction changes the sound dramatically because the bones and tissues of your skull filter the vibrations. They boost the lower frequencies. They add richness. They add warmth. They add depth. So the voice you hear in your head when you speak is a blend of the air-conducted sound plus the bone-conducted bass boost that only you can hear.
So the voice you've been hearing in your head your entire life is not the voice that leaves your mouth. It's the voice that leaves your mouth plus the bone-conducted bass boost that only you can hear.
Exactly, and here's the key. When you record yourself, the microphone only captures the air-conducted sound. It cannot capture the bone conduction. That part of the experience is exclusive to you.
So the recording is the version of your voice that everyone else hears, but it is not the version you have been hearing, which is why the recording feels so wrong, so foreign, so not you, because it isn't the voice you've been living with. It's missing an entire layer of acoustic experience, the layer that made your voice feel like your voice. And without that layer, the recorded voice can feel almost unrecognizable.
And this shock is universal. Native speakers experience it too. Podcasters, professional voice actors, everyone. The first time a person hears themselves recorded, they usually flinch. It takes multiple exposures to adjust, to calibrate, to accept the recorded voice as, in fact, a version of themselves.
And now let's apply this to English learners specifically, because the bone conduction effect creates a very particular problem for us.
Which problem?
When you speak English out loud, you hear yourself in real time through bone conduction plus air. The bone conduction adds richness, warmth, and depth, which makes your English feel more fluent, more grounded, more native sounding than it actually is. From the inside, the English feels smooth, confident, almost accent-free.
And then you hit play on the recording, and suddenly, without the bone conduction boost, the same speech sounds thinner, higher, more strained, and the accent that was invisible to you from the inside is suddenly audible. Not because you got worse, because you're hearing the voice that other people hear, which is different from the voice you thought you had.
And in that gap between the imagined voice and the recorded voice is where the horror lives. The recording is not more true. The imagined voice is not more true. They are two different acoustic experiences of the same person, but learners consistently treat the recording as truth and the imagined voice as a lie, which is the exact opposite of a useful mindset.
And this is the trap, the self-criticism trap, because once a learner decides that the recording is the real them, they start to weaponize it against themselves. Every time they listen to a recording, they use it as evidence of failure, evidence of inadequacy, evidence that their English is worse than they thought, which means they use one of the most valuable feedback tools in language learning as a tool of psychological self-harm.
And they stop recording themselves, because who wants to voluntarily produce evidence of their own inadequacy? The recording tool, which could have been their best coach, becomes their most feared enemy, and the learning that could have come from repeated recording never happens.
Which is a tragedy, because a recording listened to correctly is one of the closest things a language learner has to a native speaker friend who will patiently listen to their English and give them specific, actionable, objective feedback. Free, available anytime, endlessly patient. The recording is a gift if you know how to receive it.
Which brings us to the reframe, the mindset that transforms the recording from an enemy into a tool: acoustic objectivity.
Yes, let's define it clearly.
Acoustic objectivity is the practice of listening to your recorded voice with the same detached, curious, analytical mindset you would use if you were listening to a stranger's recording, as if you were a linguist studying a speaker you have never met, as if you were a coach evaluating a student who is not you.
And this mindset changes everything, because when you listen to a stranger, you don't feel shame, you don't feel horror, you feel curious observation, you notice patterns, you catch specific sounds that could be improved, you give constructive feedback without the emotional weight of self-attack.
And you can do the same thing with your own recording. It requires practice, it requires deliberate mental effort, but it is a skill that can be built. And once built, it transforms your relationship with recording forever.
Let's give the audience the specific 3-step protocol, because the mindset is one thing, the actual practice of listening productively is another.
Yes, 3 steps.
Step 1. Delay the first listen by 24 hours.
This is the foundational step. Immediately after you record yourself, do not listen. The emotional distance between speaking and listening is too small. Your ego is still attached to the performance. Your inner critic is still primed. Waiting even 1 hour makes a difference. Waiting 24 hours makes a big difference.
Because by the time you press play 24 hours later, you have already moved on. The specific moments of performance is behind you. The voice you hear feels slightly more like a stranger, and listening as a stranger is exactly the mindset you want.
Step 2. Listen once for content only.
The first listen, when you finally do it, is not for critique. It is for content. You listen to what you said, not how you said it, not the accent, not the pronunciation, just the ideas, just the vocabulary you chose, just the story you told.
And by focusing on content, you accomplish 2 things. First, you stop the automatic self-critique from taking over because your attention is elsewhere. Second, you often notice that your content is surprisingly good, that you expressed real ideas, that you communicated real value, which reminds you that speaking English is not just about how you sound, it is also about what you say.
Step 3. Listen a second time for one specific thing.
The second listen, and only the second listen, is when you allow acoustic critique to enter, but not general critique, never general critique, specific critique, one target. Choose one specific element of your speech to focus on and listen for that one thing only.
For example, one time you listen only for pronunciation of a specific sounds like th or r. Another time you listen only for the natural rhythm of your speech. Another time you listen only for filler words. Another time you listen only for sentence final intonation. Never all at once, one thing at a time.
And the reason this works is general critique is overwhelming. It hits you with 100 imperfections at once, and the brain, receiving 100 criticisms simultaneously, cannot act on any of them. It just collapses into shame. Specific critique, on the other hand, is actionable. If you notice a specific pattern in one area, you can practice that specific pattern in isolation and improve it, rep by rep, recording by recording.
3 steps. Delay by 24 hours. Listen once for content. Listen a second time for one specific thing. Together, they turn the recording into a coach instead of a judge, into a tool instead of a torture device, into an ally instead of an enemy.
And once a learner internalizes this protocol, they can record themselves regularly, weekly, sometimes daily, without the emotional cost that used to come with it, which means they get the enormous feedback benefit of recording without paying the price of self-attack.
Which is one of the most powerful pivots in advanced English learning, because most learners simply cannot access the value of recording because the self-criticism is too painful. Once you can access it, your improvement accelerates dramatically.
Okay, let's do a role play. Speaker 1, set the scene. Yes, Speaker 2 will play a learner named Elena who has just recorded a 2-minute answer to a simple prompt in English. She listens to the recording, first with the self-criticism mindset, then later with acoustic objectivity mindset.
Okay, version 1, the self-criticism reaction. Elena has just pressed play on her recording. Let me voice her internal monologue as she listens. Oh God, that's what I sound like? My accent is so heavy. I sound like a beginner. My R's are wrong. My intonation is flat. I say every 3 seconds. I sound so unconfident. Why did I say I think so many times? I sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. This is embarrassing. If my colleagues heard this, they would lose respect for me. I am worse than I thought. I should not have recorded this. I am going to delete it right now. I am never doing this again.
And listen to what just happened. In 2 minutes of listening, Elena has absorbed dozens of self-attacks. Every specific observation instantly turned into a global attack on her worth and competence. The accent became, I sound like a beginner. A specific became, I sound unconfident. A phrase repetition became, colleagues would lose respect for me. The recording was not a source of feedback. It was a source of accumulating shame.
And Elena now dreads recordings. She has associated them with a sinking feeling in her stomach, so she never records again, and she loses one of the most powerful learning tools she could have.
Now, version 2. Same Elena, same recording, same voice, 2 completely different outcomes created by 2 different listening mindsets. The self-criticism mindset shrinks Elena. The acoustic objectivity mindset grows Elena.
Okay, listening for just the content first. She talked about a project she's proud of. She had a clear structure. She used the word iterated, which is actually a sophisticated choice. She told a small story about the team dynamics. That was engaging. Her content is genuinely good. She would sound informed to anyone listening.
Good. And now for the second listen, she picks one target. Let's say the target is filler words.
Okay, listening for fillers now. Interesting, she used you know 7 times in 2 minutes. That's more than she thought. But she used only twice, which is actually fine. So the you know pattern is the specific thing to work on. Next time she practices, she can consciously replace you know with a short pause. That's a clear, actionable takeaway. Nothing else to worry about right now.
And listen to that. The same recording that produced 2 minutes of shame in version 1 produced 2 minutes of curious analytical observation in version 2, and it produced a specific, actionable, small improvement target. Replace you know with a short pause. No shame, no spiraling, no deletion, no vow to stop recording, just a piece of useful feedback, which Elena can now practice for a week. And next week, she can record again and notice if the you know frequency dropped, which is exactly how deliberate practice actually works.
Same Elena, same recording, same voice. 2 completely different outcomes, created by 2 different listening mindsets. The self-criticism mindset shrinks Elena. The acoustic objectivity mindset grows Elena.
Word tour.
First word, objectivity. Objectivity is the quality of judging something without being influenced by personal feelings or biases. It is what scientists strive for. It is what good coaches offer. And it is the mindset that transforms recording from a self-attack tool into a real feedback tool.
For example, learning to bring objectivity to your own recordings is one of the most powerful mental skills you can build for accelerated English improvement. Repeat, objectivity.
Objectivity.
Next, acoustic. Acoustic means relating to sound, to how something sounds. It is a technical word that captures the specific dimension we are working with when we record ourselves. Not our English knowledge, not our vocabulary, the sound of our voice as it actually leaves our mouth.
For example, the gap between your imagined voice and your recorded voice is an acoustic gap, created by the fact that your ears hear you differently than a microphone does. Repeat, acoustic.
Acoustic. Next, to calibrate. To calibrate something means to adjust or tune it so that it matches a reference standard. When you listen to your recordings repeatedly, you slowly calibrate your inner ear to match the acoustic reality that other people hear. It is a real, gradual, valuable process.
For example, repeated exposure to your recorded voice slowly calibrates your self-perception so that the gap between your imagined voice and your recorded voice narrows over time. Repeat, calibrate.
Calibrate. Next, to flinch. To flinch means to make a sudden, involuntary movement of discomfort or fear, especially when confronted with something painful, and it is the perfect word for the physical reaction most people have when they first hear their own recorded voice.
For example, almost everyone flinches the first time they hear a recording of their own voice, even professional speakers and native language voice actors. Repeat, flinch.
Flinch. Next, actionable. Actionable means specific and clear enough to be acted upon. The word captures the difference between vague general feedback and useful practical feedback. Vague criticism produces shame. Actionable feedback produces improvement.
For example, the whole purpose of listening for one specific thing at a time is to convert vague criticism into actionable feedback that you can actually practice and improve on. Repeat, actionable.
Actionable. And finally, constructive. Constructive means helping to build or improve something rather than tear it down. Constructive criticism is one of the most valuable resources in any learning process, and acoustic objectivity is essentially the practice of making your self-criticism constructive instead of destructive.
For example, once you learn to bring constructive attention to your recordings, they stop being sources of shame and become sources of steady, measurable improvement. Repeat, constructive.
Constructive.
6 words today. Objectivity, acoustic, calibrate, flinch, actionable, and constructive. Every one of them is a real, useful modern English word that captures something specific about the psychology and practice of self-improvement.
And they're the kinds of words you'll hear in professional coaching, learning conversations, and personal development contexts. Speaker 2, one final takeaway for everyone watching.
That the voice on your recording is not more real than the voice in your head. They are 2 different acoustic experiences of the same person, and the shock of hearing yourself for the first time is universal. Native speakers feel it. Professional voice actors feel it. Every human being who has recorded themselves flinches at first. You are not uniquely bad. You are just not calibrated to your own external voice yet.
And the fix is not to avoid recording, it is to change how you listen, to bring acoustic objectivity, to delay the first listen by 24 hours, to listen once for content only, to listen a second time for one specific target. Pronunciation, rhythm, filler words, intonation. Pick a different target each time.
And notice what happens. Notice how the horror shrinks with each recording. Notice how your ear starts to calibrate to your own external voice. Notice how, by the third or fourth recording, you can actually hear yourself with something approaching real objectivity instead of pure shame.
And drop a comment after the week. Tell us how many recordings you did. Tell us which specific targets you chose. Tell us if the horror got smaller. We want to hear the calibration happening.
Because the moment a learner accepts their recorded voice without shame as a real and useful version of themselves is one of the most freeing moments in language learning. The tool becomes available, the feedback starts to flow, and the improvement accelerates in ways that were impossible while the recording was too painful to use.
I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to look at one of the most universally uncomfortable moments in English learning.
Delay the listen, bring objectivity. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.